as soon as one failed, they all fail because not everybody's connected. Like every person in a company should be a salesperson for that company.
Yeah.
Everybody that works for you should be able to promote that company and be proud of where they work. It doesn't matter what level you're at or what you're doing. You have to have that connectivity, and you have to have that ability to know what the end game is for your organization. So when you look at a leader who has that type of mindset, like the wrong kind of mindset, the exact same thing, that they are afraid of letting the people that could surpass them do so because they're afraid of losing their place in line and their place in the market. And really, like, they should be looking at it like, why is that person so much better than I am, and what can I learn from that person, and how do I improve myself so that I'm on a more level playing field with that person. You can't stop people from progressing because you don't. You have to realize that you're not always going to be on top. You want to bring people with you. Like, the whole idea is that you bring people with you to celebrate that, to help them and to grow. And if you're a leader and you don't have that kind of a mindset, you're not going to be a leader for very long. So you really do have to have a growth mindset and a positive mindset and an enabling mindset to let people come along with you. That's the whole idea.
Welcome to the Ida as If podcast experience. Welcome to Visionary Voices, the podcast where we go behind the scenes and have conversations with visionary entrepreneurs, especially Canadian entrepreneurs. Today, we do have the honor of having Kevin Raymond, and Kevin is a performance mindset coach, and you help people to get unstuck, to get beyond themselves so that they can achieve their full potential. So thank you for being here, and I truly see you as a visionary. Thank you for coming on the podcast today, Kevin.
Thanks very much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. It's wonderful to be here.
Awesome. Great. So I know you're based in Canada. I know a little bit about you. And what I like to do right here is to kind of dive into the minds of visionaries and entrepreneurs to see what their thinking process is and how they solve the problems that they're trying to solve and the impact they're making in the world and just things like that. So if you could dive into a little bit of your story and tell me why you do what you do.
Okay, sure. Basically, I fell into coaching the last maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Um, I've always been involved in some sort of training and development. I've worked with people pretty much all of my life. I worked in the government for quite some time, and I was a policy advisor. So there was a lot of mentorship, training, things like that, and always be involved with that. And just it's always been an interest for me. Like, I was very involved in the Train the Trainer program when it first came out with the federal government, things like that. And then it's just something that always stuck with me. And I was always been, human resources, those types of things, right? And
Hmm.
I always wanted to do that type of thing, but I always ended up, just the way that life goes, you just end up trudging along in your usual thing. And then I had a health crisis that happened during the pandemic. And during my recovery time, I finished some programs and things that I was involved with before that I never got around to finishing. But because I had so much time, I was able to do that. And it ultimately led me to coaching. I ended up getting a master's in my NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. And that ultimately led me down the path of coaching. And when I started coaching, it was sort of a general um, area of like just life coaching because I wasn't really familiar with it all that much. And then ultimately, once I started working in it, I discovered that my true calling was in performance development with team leaders, executives, people that wanted to achieve greater results in their life, whether it be personal or business, right? Entrepreneurs that wanted to start a business or do better in their business or had hit a wall of some sort, where they're just blocked and they can't seem to progress any further. And they wanted to be more successful. They wanted to earn more income. They wanted to have a bigger company. And I found that that was kind of my niche. And that was where I developed um, the ability to work with them and been quite successful in doing so for the last few years.
Is there a reason why you're specifically pulled to business professionals?
It was actually something that just evolved. I really thought that I would stick to I picked like life coaching because I thought that was more of I guess my calling, where I felt that I would be more useful. Um, and I guess I didn't really look at the bigger picture of exactly how much business experience I actually did acquire in my lifetime. I was more fixated on dealing with personal issues because I had a lot of issues raising my children and going through life experiences, and I thought that's where it would end up. And then speaking with people initially, they all evolved around wanting to do better in their lives and be more successful in their career, or they had a really difficult time with life balance, and it just ultimately led me down the path of leading to entrepreneurs and executives that manage people in different levels of their careers and things like that, but also, in situations where you're faced with difficulties or decision making processes and things that require some skill set to work through and make sure that you as a leader are giving back to the person in such a way that you're helping them develop their leadership skills as well, right? So
Hmm.
that's where I found with the executives, that's where I find my greatest strength, right? Is helping them to, a lot of times people acquire a team when they take on a new job and they have people that they've never worked with before. They've either come from another area of the company that they're currently working with or another company altogether.
Yeah.
Um, so helping them with that transition, which is very important, it's the key moment for any leader to take over and make sure that they have the production and the type of response they want to get from the team that they're working with, right? And they also want to have
Yeah.
that, that bond that helps them trust and build and move forward.
Yeah. I think the person that I heard talk about this a lot was Gary V. And he talked about the
Yes.
fact that oftentimes the quote unquote high performer in companies turns out to also be one of the most toxic people in companies, but most companies would retain that person because they bring in the revenues for the company.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, their very presence in the company is kind of toxic to the rest of the environment. What do you say about that?
It's very true, and it's quite common actually. It's surprising. Um, it's it's sort of like there's a hierarchy to leadership, and a really good publication that you should read on that is called Good to Great, and it is all about leadership and different levels of leadership. And it's a pretty popular book, and I think a lot of people have already looked at it.
Hmm.
But it really does exemplify exactly what you said. That there's if you're a leader who is afraid to allow people to grow and develop and climb that ladder of leadership themselves, then you're only creating, even if you're not aware of it, you're actually creating a toxic environment just because you're pushing back morale, you're pushing back people who want to move forward, and you're afraid. And that is something that has also surfaced in other areas of the work that I do, that if you're hiring somebody for a position, um, and they are a candidate that would most likely take your job, most people won't hire that person, right? Because
Yeah.
they're afraid that that person is going to jump into their position, right? And they're
Yeah.
not secure enough in themselves to handle that. So a lot of people, um, in the situation that you described, they're only going to have team members that go to a certain level, and they're not going to get beyond that, and because they don't want to do it, there's no point. So they just work for the clock, and they get out, they come in, they go, they don't produce a lot, they produce the bare minimum. It's things like that. So you really have to work with people to open up and help them to understand and be more secure in themselves, to allow people to grow and develop. And another good example of being a good leader is being able to leave the organization that you have been a leader with, and have that organization continue to be successful without you.
Hmm.
If that organization is not successful when you leave, you've not done your job. Like, you've done a bad job, because it should function without you. You should have developed a team that is willing to carry the torch when you're not there. Right? That's
Yeah.
kind of the essence of what it's about, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
are you familiar with the work of Simon Sinek?
yes, yeah. Why? Right?
Yeah, I start
He's
with why.
Yeah.
And he talks a lot about company cultures, and for a lot of companies they haven't even created that culture that if you walk
Yeah.
around and ask, let's say you ask the janitor or you ask even the senior management in the companies, they have no idea what the true values of the company are or why the company
Yeah.
does what it does. So what is it that's your impression about that, and why is that something that's lacking in most organizations?
It's it's something that's very important, and I think that's kind of where like a mission statement comes from, and it's kind of the purpose of a mission statement, um, because there when you it's kind of like taking, a good example, I guess, would be like maybe the Titanic, and it was separated into all these different sections, and only one section functioned by itself, right? So it's as soon as one failed, they all failed because not everybody's connected. Like every person in a company should be a salesperson for that company.
Yeah.
Everybody that works for you should be able to promote that company and be proud of where they work. It doesn't matter what level you're at or what you're
Yeah.
doing. You have to have that connectivity, and you have to have that ability to know what the end game is for your organization. Otherwise, it's not going to. It'll function and it'll probably do fairly well, but it's not going to be like a really remarkable company, and you're not going to have that really remarkable camaraderie and fluidness that you want um, with your organization. And it is all about ensuring that people know what it's all about. I'm sure you can go to any company and ask somebody in probably like, a lower level position, what is it exactly that what's the end game for this organization? They wouldn't have a clue, right? You could ask them VP and they probably many of them wouldn't have a clue either, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. They can definitely tell you what the company does, but not necessarily why it does what it does, right?
yes,
And if you cannot
right,
have that mission statement to it, then I think you don't even know the direction in which to guide your leaders to go in. Because speaking about the bad
exactly.
leadership that you talked about, so like a leader leaving the company and then everything falling apart, meaning that they were not a good leader to it. So sometimes
Hmm.
it's not even about the person himself; it's about the company itself not having communicated its mission, its values, its vision to its people so that the people can
Hmm.
implement in the way it's supposed to be implemented.
Absolutely. It's key to having a success, whether you work for yourself or whether you work for, if you work for yourself, your clients are your salespeople, clearly, right? Like
Yeah.
and you would know that. Um, if you're doing a good job and people are there for you, then they know, like your client should know what your end game is as well, right? So
Yeah.
it's very important to have that connectivity with everyone in the organization for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So a question that comes to mind is in regards to the leadership side of things. So I'm thinking everything definitely connects back to mindset. So what would be
Mhm.
the mindset of a person that, or what kind of mindset shift do they need to have in order to go from being a bad leader to being a good leader?
I think that in the simplest form, there's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, right?
Yeah.
And
I love
a
that book.
bad yeah, right. So a bad leader would have a fixed mindset because that person would think, how they equate it to people saying like, why is this happening to me? Why is this always happening to me? Why does all this crap happen to me? Right? Um,
Yeah.
it's and you try to think of it like, if you have a positive growth mindset, you think like, okay, this is happening to me for a reason. What can I learn from this? Where can I get it? Right. So when
Yeah.
you look at a leader who has that type of mindset, like the wrong kind of mindset, if that's the exact same thing, that they are afraid of letting the people that could surpass them do so because they're afraid of losing their place in line and their place in the market. And really, like they should be looking at it like, what? Why is that person so much better than I am? And what can I learn from that person? And how do I improve myself so that I'm on a more level playing field with that person? Like why you can't stop people from progressing because you don't,
Yeah.
right? Like you have to realize that you're not always going to be on top. Everybody spends a little bit of time on the top, but you can't stay there forever. It's impossible, right? But
Yeah.
you want to bring people with you. Like the whole idea is that you bring people with you to celebrate that, to help them and to grow. And if you're a leader and you don't have that kind of a mindset, you're not going to be a leader for very long, right? Like you're
Mhm.
you're going to end up having to start all over again because what happens is you don't progress, and then you're slowly taken out of the equation and put somewhere else in the organization. And you can maybe get, again, level one leadership, but you have to work really hard, not only to prove that you can do it, but to get rid of that reputation that you have to get a better get ahead again, right?
Yeah.
So it really, like, you really do have to have a growth mindset and a positive mindset and an enabling mindset to let people come along with you. That's the whole idea.
Yeah. All right, Kevin, I want to go into one of your existing or past clients.
Mhm.
What would be your favorite success story that you've had with a client in the transformation that they have experienced?
My favorite story is, I had a client who worked for an organization, a large Canadian organization actually, that does very well known, and he was at a VP level, and he was also starting his own company. And his issue when he came to me was that he just found that he could only get to a certain point. He was just frustrated and struggling with getting it off the ground. And then through working with him together, a huge part of his issue was time management and focus, and not having a plan, a, a, a set plan for what he wanted. Like, if I asked him, like, where do you want this place to be in 5 years, and he couldn't answer that question. And so we broke it down, and we put together a 3, 6, 12, and 18-month plan. And then, what were the most important people that you had to have involved in your organization to make it work, to get where you want it to go. And then within 6 months, he brought on an individual that we worked on together and brought in, and he acquired his first $1 million client, like, within 6 months.
Wow.
So he
That's
was
at
pretty
his
happy
own
about that.
startup that he was working at.
Yes, right. So that was his own thing. That was, and that's what he needed to see. Like, that's what he wanted to do and see what he could do. But he was just so caught up in, almost like a spider web. You get stuck in the middle, and then you're ripping down all these lines to try and get out, but you don't have a path. Like, you have to have a path. You have to have a plan to get where you want it to go. And that's pretty much the first thing I do with most of my clients is, what are you doing? What do you want to do? Where do you want to be? And how are you getting there? What's your plan? And then if they don't have a proper plan, that's what we work on. That's one of the first things that we do, is put it together so that they can get where they want to go, right?
Mhm.
And since then he's acquired several more clients of the same caliber. So he's well on his way, and we're still working together to this day. Um, and he's very successful and very happy. And it's, for me, it's a really great success story because, I helped the client get exactly what he wanted to get. Most of my stories are success stories. They're not
Yeah.
all, not all clients. You can't work with everyone. I just recently had someone that, I probably won't take as a client because we just didn't have that connection, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just kind of can sense when it's not going to work. So better to be honest about that than run into something that you can't manage, right?
Yeah. So if there is a professional who's listening right now, a business professional who's listening right now, and is kind of at that place where it's like, okay, I need to strengthen my mind game. I need to start to achieve I need to start working towards achieving my full potential. Something needs to change. I have a blockage somewhere that needs to change. What would Kevin say to them?
Well, I would try and find out, like, what is it? Why do you feel that there's a block? And what is it that you think that block is? Like, what do you think is holding you back? Because you have to find out what it is. Like, is it something that's just in your current purview right now? Or is it something from your past? Is it something that, where you don't feel that you're worthy of success or that you're capable of doing it? You got to find out what the blockage is, right? And then
Hmm.
I would work with them to find out what that is. And then I would give them the tools to help manage working through it and get past it.
Okay. And when you talk about strengthening your mind game, what is that? Your mental game.
Your mental game is about, um, you know, trying to get a good example, but I guess basically, like, if you're not growing mentally all the time, like if you're not giving yourself more information and feeding your mind, you will become stagnant and you won't get the information you need. Like if you just look at yourself or myself, right, the work that we're doing, if you're not constantly learning things, you're not going to be able to acquire clients in the various fields that you want to acquire them, right? Like you have to
Yeah.
read and learn and grow. Your mental strength is everything that you're learning every single day. And it's not always a book. It's not always, it's people that you talk to, it's things that you see, it's where you want to develop and grow. You constantly have to be doing that. Your mental strength is all about what you know and how you acquire information and how you go about getting that information, whether it's through educational resources or other people or a mentor or a coach, whatever way you have to do that. You have to work at constantly feeding that. It's just that you're like a dog, like you just constantly have to feed them, right? And
Yeah.
nourish it, right? Like
Yeah.
keep it going, right?
Yeah. So would
So
you say that that would be one of the biggest mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making?
yes, because they get stagnant in their own thing. Plus, the other thing is that they think they can do everything. And,
Oh
when
yeah.
you first start out, you can do everything, right? Because you don't have anything else to do. But ultimately, once you start growing, you can't. And that's for me, when I work with individuals that are starting businesses or somewhere between the 6 and 12 month mark, that's their biggest problem is they're still doing everything and they can't.
Everything.
You can't do everything, right?
Yeah.
And you yourself know, like you probably most of your clients
Yeah.
are probably people that are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and come to you with a bag of paper, right? Just like help me.
Absolutely. And very early this morning, I was actually talking to an entrepreneur because, in general, people come to me for help with like accounting, bookkeeping, and their
Hmm.
finances in general. And you see
Yeah,
people who have been doing things the very manual, tedious way, and they're stuck in this way of like, okay, I don't want to pay for an accountant or a bookkeeper
yeah,
or anybody to take on those things just because you're stuck in that small small mindset space. Like you're
yeah,
judging yourself from where you are instead of looking at what you could be doing if you could just free yourself from
yeah.
some of the 80% of things that you're doing so you can focus on your 20%.
Absolutely, right? And all you have to
Yeah.
do is go and find somebody else, like a mentor or somebody who's doing kind of something similar to you, and
Hmm.
then see what their system is. And then all you have to do is look at their system and think like, oh my God, what am I doing? Why am I still doing this myself? Right?
Yeah.
And you see how somebody's automated their accounting system and how it works, or how it, you take it to someone and they do it for you and it's so quick.
Yeah.
Like that's what happens when you don't educate yourself and you don't, expand. You're
Yeah.
stuck in this little bubble, right?
Yeah.
And it just gets smaller and smaller as you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
So
Oh, one of the biggest mistakes that I see clients make right now, especially when it comes to their accounting and taxes, is they hang on to, like I mentioned, their old ways of doing things,
yeah.
and they hold on to the stuff until we get to the point where Revenue Quebec or Revenue Canada is on their neck, like, hey, they send out those letters, like, oh, Ida, I got this letter in the mail, and they're telling me they've automatically assessed me to pay
Yeah.
$8,000. That's the favorite for Quebec. They've automatically assessed me to pay $8,000 for not having filed my corporate income taxes. Is this what should I do? Is this something you can? I'm like, why why do you have to wait until it's that late for you to
Yeah.
start to address a problem that you should have looked at from the very beginning of like, oh,
Yeah.
I've incorporated a business. I'm gonna need accounting services, or I'm gonna need these administrative things that need to be taken care of. Or sometimes I don't
Yeah.
know, right? But it's about
Hmm.
having that consultation with somebody who could look at it and say, hey, these are the things that you need to start taking care of.
Yeah.
These are the things you need to start implementing. So what is it that you see in your experience that people kind of misunderstand about working with business coaches or professional coaches or mindset coaches like yourself, performance mindset coaches like yourself, that you can address right now?
I think a lot of people, if I'm understanding your question correctly, a lot of people think that if they get a coach, that the coach is going to do all of these things for them, that then they don't have to do it, right? Whereas in reality, like a coach actually doesn't tell you how to do anything. The coach shows you how to do things for yourself and how to resource information and how to make things like that work for you. It's all about getting you to be, more productive, more self-aware, more capable, and how to utilize what you have available to you to the best of your advantage, right? Like
Mhm.
I think I'm not sure, but in my experience thus far, um, I listen a lot to people, and let them work through it. Your My job for them is to help them see a way to resolve their issue without telling them, because you want them to build on their own resources, and you want them to pull from themselves on how they're going to do that, and you guide them, and you show them a direction to go, or another opportunity to look at, or an alternative, things like that. Um, i think quite often people think that coaches are like the magic button to not having to do the work, and that's not, we're not sports coaches, but
Yeah.
sports coaches, if you look at that, like, they don't do it either. Like, they're not dropping baskets for you, right? They're showing you
Yeah.
how to properly stand, how to throw the ball, what to do with your wrist, how to twist, and everything else, right? They're
Yeah.
giving you things that you have to practice. So it's the same thing. It's, like, I show people in a very elementary way how to manage their time, right? And you would think that that's not something that somebody would need handholding for, but it is. It's a huge issue for a lot of people, like how to learn how to say no when people are calling you and asking you, and you just drop what you're doing. And my biggest response to that is, like, every time somebody is asking you to do something and you don't say no, what do you're always going to be saying no to something. So what are you saying no to when you say yes to someone else? You're
Yeah.
saying no to all of your stuff, all your goals, all your plans, right? So you
Yeah.
have to, time blocking is something that I use a lot with my clients, and I had a client who persistently, he worked in construction, and was really busy and had a lot of projects on the go. And people would call, and say, "I need you to come down to the site right now." And he would drop everything and go. And I'm like, "What are you doing? Like, you can't do that. Like, these people are calling you with the expectation that you're going to come, because that's what they do. That's for them, it's a life altering moment. So
Mhm.
I need some action now." But you cannot do that. Like, you can't just drop everything you're doing every time a client calls. So you tell them, like, and he's like, "How do you deal with that?" Well, you tell them, like, I have some time at 4 o'clock. I'm going to call you back, and let's see if we can resolve it. Right? It's like the building is not going to collapse. Well, if it does, then 4 o'clock's not going to matter. But you know what I'm saying?
Well,
Like,
that could
you have
literally
to,
happen in construction, right?
for sure, right? But hopefully it's not. But very seldom when a client calls you and screams at you and everything, it's not going to be the end of the world if you have to tell them, "No, I'm going to call you back in 1 hour," or they have no idea what you're doing, so they just assume that
Yes.
you can drop whatever you're doing and come, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
happen that way. Like, in reality, you can't do that. You can't run a business that way.
Yeah. So thinking about people in the construction industry, or maybe just in general, a few months ago, I was doing an interview with another famous Canadian entrepreneur, and he gave me this advice that a lot of what he sees a lot of entrepreneurs failing at is they don't know how to eliminate or automate or delegate.
Hmm.
And when you're talking
Yeah,
about this particular case of this person in construction who drops everything to move on, of course you're saying no to your personal your own goals in order to meet somebody else's goal. But what part would, let's say, delegation play in that, which comes back to team?
exactly. So delegation, like, why, number one, why is everybody calling you, right? Like, do you not have a project manager? Are they not doing their job? You have to look at those things, right? Like, there's things that you shouldn't be doing. So should that person be calling you? Should that person be calling somebody else? Should that person not be calling you at all? You have to look at those things, and it's along the same line. Like, for me, it's like delete, delegate, or defer, right? So it's kind of
Mm,
all the same stuff, right? Like, is it something that really has to be taken care of? Is it something that can wait? Is it something that you can refer to somebody else, right? So it's
yeah.
it's along the same line. Um, but yeah, like, you have priorities, you have a system. Um, so everybody's gonna try to buck the system, as they call it, right? Like, everybody's
Mm,
gonna try and jump the queue or jump the line. Like, my job is more important. I'm doing this. I'm doing that, right? So you that's where you have to stick to what your plan is. That's why you have goals. Like, you set goals, and that's how you achieve your goals, is by following the plan that you make, right? And without a plan, you're going to fall off the rails and not know how to get back up. That's why you need a plan. If you have a plan, you can fall off the rails. You know exactly what you have to do to get back on, and then you keep moving forward.
Yeah. I want to get into some fun questions about you.
That's scary.
Well, no, it's fun. Okay, let's start with a simple one. What is the biggest compliment you've ever received from a client?
Wow. That I changed their life.
Oh, wow. Okay, expand on
Yeah.
that.
So that was good. Like, because they were just so overwhelmed, and working with them made such a difference that, they actually felt that their life was better because of working with me, that they had a better family life, they had a better work-life balance, and they achieved the goals that they wanted to achieve. So I
Awesome.
thought that was
Okay.
pretty good. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, great. What is the best advice that you have ever received?
Not to, um, I guess like, not to listen to what other people say if it's in a negative manner. Like, so, like, if you like, I know in the past where I've had my other businesses and stuff, people would comment always. There's always somebody that's going to say something negative, right? And
Mhm.
the best advice I ever got from somebody was like, don't don't let that get to you. Like, just let it roll off your back, right?
Mhm.
That, and the other thing was, when I was in construction myself, and a friend of mine said, always remember, you can always go down in price, but you can never go up. And that was a very good lesson to know as well. So,
Wow, that is
because
good.
yeah, right? Like, especially in construction. Right? So it was, you said you can always lower your price because it's so competitive and people are always undercutting you. Like, if a lot of people I found, in that business, they're not making money because they're just trying to be overly competitive, right?
Yeah.
And it's better to give up a couple of jobs to save your reputation, and get the price you want, right? So,
Wow. Okay. So I do have a client in construction, and what you said completely resonates with me. And I want you to go deeper into that a little bit. So
okay.
he and bearing in mind, because I listen to a lot of podcasts and I read a lot of books, I have Alex Hormozy. Are you familiar with him?
Hmm.
Okay. So Alex Hormozy talks about the concept of making a grand slam offer. A grand slam offer is an offer where the offer is so good that people feel stupid saying no.
Yeah.
Is there a way, because competing in pricing is the highway to your own downfall, because pretty much it's like,
Yeah.
who can sell that the cheapest, and that's not the way you get to make money as a business, right? What is a way that, in your experience, maybe that a construction person, a person in the industry of construction, can improve their offer without necessarily making it about a lower price? Because people don't come for people come for something. They come for a solution.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that, I've done myself, and I've had some clients do as well. But one is, instead of lowering your price, just offer more. So maybe less time. Maybe it'll take you less time. You can do it in less time than the other people, right? Um,
Yes.
there's a number of different things, like more, aftercare, a guarantee, things like that, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, especially in construction, you take a chance and you say, you know what, I'm going to give you this. I'm going to do this first project at this rate. If you like it, then you're going to go to my regular rate, right? I've seen people do that and they've been successful with it, right? And
Hmm.
especially when it's in a very competitive thing and it's a large number of projects that are coming forward, right?
Hmm.
Everybody does look for the best price, but then, it's your job as a person in the field, of whatever field you're in, to let the people know that quality is a big factor in what you do,
Yeah.
and that your work is superior to that of something. If you charge $10 an hour and somebody's coming in at $4 an hour, there's a reason you're charging $10 an hour,
Yeah.
right? Like, if
Yeah.
that person can afford to do it for $4 an hour, you're going to get exactly what you're paying for. It's very
Yeah.
simple, right? You're getting what you pay for. And sometimes that's all you need to say. I'm just, you're going to get what you pay for. Like if somebody can do your kitchen for $20,000 and your quote was $55,000, there's a reason, right? Crown
Yes.
molding, no better fit, no gap, no squeaky cupboards, and everything's level, right?
Yeah.
When like all of the other work is done. So it's your product that you sell. You sell your product, you give a better deal, and you give more quality for the money. That's why you cost more, right?
Yeah.
Justify it. People have a right to ask you why you're charging more. Just tell them why you're charging more. Because I'm better. I do better work. This is the type of wood I use. This is the type of count. I'm not putting together an IKEA cupboard. I'm putting together a custom built cupboard, right? It's that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Right?
Speaking of which, I think every single Montrealer can relate to this. Why on earth do we have construction holidays when construction only happens within a really short time in the year, and then 2 weeks out of that period was like you can't get anybody to do anything?
Well, I'm not from Montreal, so
okay.
I don't have the answer to that. But I do ask my partner that all the time, like, what is the construction holiday and why? And I guess it's because they actually do work. If you look at other provinces, there's winter construction, but it's not as intense as the winter construction that occurs in Montreal. And I'm not sure why, but I can honestly say I've never experienced this much construction in a city anywhere ever. I think when you become a person who lives in Montreal, you should get your own pylon. Quite frankly,
yeah. Oh my God,
everybody should get two, and then that should be your parking spot, because that's the other issue in Montreal. It's parking. So
yeah. Well, if anybody out there, go ahead.
Sorry. I was gonna say I went to my car this morning and there was a ticket on my car, and I'm like, what the heck? I've got a parking pass. Like, why would I have a ticket? And then I realized when I read it, it wasn't my ticket. Somebody just took it and put it on my car from their car.
Oh, why?
Well, I guess maybe some people just probably just pay their tickets. Oh no, another ticket, and they just pay it without looking at it, but not me. So,
oh my goodness. Yeah, that's true. Wow.
Crazy.
Well, speaking of which, right, because if we're looking for ways to improve Canadian businesses, for example, it's possible that somebody decides that, okay, the way I'm going to differentiate my services or the way I'm going to differentiate myself is like, my company works even in the construction holidays, and we can get your work done within this short time, even while everybody else is not working at this time. I don't know why any company hasn't thought about maybe doing
I don't
something
think you're
like
allowed to. I think that's why. I don't think you're actually allowed to. Yeah, I think that's why that's why nobody's doing it, right? Because I really don't think it's permitted. It's against the law. So yeah, like, I mean, you can do your own, right? You can do your own construction or whatever, but you can't hire a company to do it. So
like the whole syndicate thing, it's like, no, you can't. Well, that's not smart.
I know, right?
It doesn't
really make sense.
No, it doesn't.
But I can tell you that if you are in construction in the city of Montreal and you want to, all you have to do is, number one, show up, because like a lot of people don't show up at all, right?
Yeah.
But be honest and fair and do a good job, and you'll have plenty of work. Like, there's tons of work in Montreal. So if you're in construction, you're not working, there's a reason. Honestly, it's like, we live in the plateau, and we have a number of things that have to be done to our condo, and we've been through the gamut with people coming, trying to get quotes and things like that. Nobody shows up. Like, it's crazy. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's just proving that you are worth your money, and you should be very successful, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a food for thought for people in the construction industry. If you want to make progress, you want to drive transformation, that's something for you to think about. Okay, Kevin, I have another question for you. So if you could have any three people for dinner, people dead or alive, who are three people you would choose and why?
Oh wow, this is a conversation that we often have when friends get together for dinner, and everybody laughs at me because of my answer. So one would be Prince William,
Hmm.
actually.
Wow.
I think he would be a very good guest. I think he's a very intelligent human being, and I like him. Like, I think he's a nice guy. And I would like to have Judy Woodruff, who is from PBS News, um,
I
in the
don't know her.
States. She's a very, very well spoken, incredible anchor. She used to do the PBS News, and she's sort of semi retired now, and just so special. But somebody that I would definitely enjoy having dinner with, and her husband, because he's involved in the same type of business. Um, and then if I went on the celebrity the celebrity run, I would invite Cher.
Who? Cher?
Yeah, for sure.
Wow, you have very unconventional answers.
I know. It was,
I didn't expect any of those. Like I've asked
I
that
know,
question to a
right?
couple of people. Jesus always comes up, and Jesus almost
God, I don't
always
want to be
comes
at a
up.
table with him.
Why not?
God, no thanks. We talk enough.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Fair enough. So what would your parents describe if you had the chance to ask your parents about what you do? How would they describe what you do for a living?
Say that again.
If you had a chance to come have a conversation with your parents, how would they describe what you do for a living?
Um, my stepfather. um, my stepfather would say he was just full of crap,
Oh wow.
literally. And my mother would describe it pretty well, like what I do. She was always like all of my parents. I'd say all of my parents, because my father passed away when I was 10, and my stepfather and my mother are both passed now. So,
Oh, sorry to
um,
hear that.
but my mother, like, she was always very much aware of what I did, and she was very interested in what I did all the time. She she was a very young spirited person, and I'm very thankful to have had her in my life, because she's taught me so much. Like, she's such an incredibly powerful woman. um but she would be able to describe exactly what I did. Like, every time I did something, she would tell everybody. I'd be talking to a friend or something, and, oh, my mom was telling me what you were doing. I'm just like, really?
Wow.
Like, I'm like 60. Why is my mother talking about what I'm doing, right? But
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, my mother was very well in tune with what was going on. So yeah,
Would it be accurate to say your mom had a very big impact in your life?
massive for sure. Because, like I said, my father passed away when I was 10. I come from a very large family of five, and then my stepfather, he had five children as well. So there were 10 kids at one point, and my mother really, they just carried the torch for everything. There was a number of years before she remarried, and she worked, and she did a ton of stuff, and there was never a moment when you didn't feel that you had her support or um, help. She was always there, and she just she was very resilient, and showed what real strength was about. Like, I was really, I missed her very much, because she was always like, lots of fun, great sense of humor, but very strong woman for sure.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can feel that from the way you're talking about her.
yeah, she was great.
Yeah, awesome. And then one question before I pass on to the final one. If you had the
Yep.
chance to talk to your younger self from 20 years ago, what piece of advice would you give to yourself?
I would tell myself, never, don't ever not do what you're thinking of doing. Right? Just do it. So you wouldn't have any regret. I don't have any regrets, really, but there are things that I think back that oh, I should have done that. But and that's what I would tell myself. Just do what you want to do. Don't stop yourself.
You want to share one of those things with us?
One was actually acting, and I did a lot of it when I was in school and when I was younger,
Say
and
that
I
again.
had an opportunity acting,
Acting.
and
Oh,
yeah, I had an opportunity to pursue it a little bit more, and I chose not to. But who knows, right? Hopefully, it's happened. But I'm not, like, it's not a regret. It's just I probably should have dabbled in it a little bit more. But,
Yeah, I guess
you
it's
know,
just one of those things. It's like, oh, what would have happened if I actually explored
yeah,
this other path,
right.
right?
Probably nothing.
Well, but then you would know. You would
But you
know.
never know,
I
right?
think it's the same as entrepreneurship, right? You can always go back to your
Yeah,
job, but it's like, okay, what if I don't explore this thing that is on my heart
yeah,
right now?
yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
and when it comes to careers and things like that, I have always done what I wanted to do work-wise. Like, oh, I'd like to try that, so I've done it. Like, I didn't ever stop myself from doing that, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm quite happy about that.
All right. Thank you. Um, one last question for you.
Okay.
Is there anything that I haven't is there anything you would like to share with us that maybe nobody has ever asked you before, but you want to talk about it today?
Um, I don't know. I get that would be, it would be pretty personal, but like I don't. No one's ever asked me, um, how did you actually manage through um, your? I had heart surgery, so how did you manage through your heart surgery during COVID and knowing that your children were, you know, overdosing and having difficulties with drug and alcohol abuse and things like that, right? And I went through that time, and it was very difficult and incredibly hard. And then, my mother also passed away at that time, and I didn't realize, at the time how difficult it was and what you actually go through. Um, but I did, and both of my children are clean now and doing fairly well. Um,
Mhm.
but it was a very, very difficult, dark period of time that I don't think I realized how much it was, and I didn't realize how much inner strength I had,
Mhm.
which I was very pleased to discover, at the end of the day, and also pleased that I still have a relationship with them, and things like
Mm.
that. So it was a lot, but and no one's ever asked me about that, so I
Can
thought
we
that
go
was
deeper in
interesting.
that? Can we go deeper in that? How did you navigate going through heart surgery in COVID here in Canada when nobody was allowed to visit anybody in COVID?
So if you want, I'll give you the whole story. So
Yes.
this, so um, I had probably about 6 months before I had congestive heart failure, and I was with my partner, and we were traveling. We were actually in Vietnam,
Mhm.
and we had done a lot of climbing and stuff. And I said, like, wow, this has really winded me. Like, I'm really having a hard time breathing. And then we returned from Vietnam and then went just for a week to Los Angeles. And there was a hill, and I could go to a museum, and I couldn't go. I couldn't get up. And then I said, I guess I need to go to the doctor when I get back. And I
Mhm.
did. And then, you know, I was living in Ontario at the time, and you're categorized as like an A, B, C, or D, and I was an A. And then so it was just a matter of trying to get in, and that was just when COVID was starting to ramp up,
Wait,
and then
A, B, C, or D depends on how severe your situation
severity,
is.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So like a D, you could probably wait like a year, and an A, you probably had like maximum 2 months to make it, right?
Wow.
So yeah. So what my problem was, I had an aorta valve issue, and so the blood was not leaving my heart. It was just congesting, and so
Mhm.
I had no like very poor circulation and all that stuff. And it wasn't because of diet or anything like that, because I've been fairly good with myself, and it was more of a virus where my heart grew like enlarged, and
Mhm.
when your heart enlarges, it doesn't go back. It just
Mhm.
stays wherever it stops, right? And
Mhm.
which caused the valve to be too small. Um, so, anyways, it went. It was about a month, and then I got a call and said, like, we're gonna bring you in for some tests and stuff. You had to get a few things done, and so finally, it was in Hamilton, and my partner lived in Montreal, and then so we rented an Airbnb for 6 weeks in Toronto, um, 1 week before my surgery, and then for the recovery, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then the day this was all while things were still open, and then the day that I my scheduled surgery was the day that they shut everything down. Like
Wow.
so, my friend was bringing me to the hospital, and literally they stopped him at the door and said, "No, only he can come in." And then that was the last time I saw anybody for that. So then
Wow.
I went through the procedure of surgery, and it was like I think it was about 14 hours in
Mm.
surgery, and then I went. It was fine. I went through it and everything, um, and then I was in the hospital for a week, and then my partner doesn't drive, so a friend of mine picked me up at the hospital and drove me to Toronto. So this would be like the week after the shutdown,
Hmm.
and and then we got to this Airbnb, and I went up and literally just stayed there for the next. I think we were there for 3 weeks, and then we got kicked out because um, the person who was renting it obviously got kicked out of where they were and had to come back, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So so then we're like, oh, where are we gonna go? And then so we thought like, well, just come back to Montreal. And then so we couldn't get a train, and you couldn't fly. Uh, and the only option we had was renting a car. And my partner doesn't drive. So I'm like, I can do it. And
Whoa.
then
With a
so
heart surgery.
yeah, right. And I didn't realize at the time that you're not allowed to drive, but so I rented a car, and then and we drove, and it took about I think from Toronto it took us 8 hours for the just because I had to stop frequently. But the thing was, we were the only people on the highway. It wasn't like there was a problem driving, right?
Yeah.
And it was pretty much a straight line. So so that was it. And then I we got to Montreal, and then I just finished my recovery here, and that was it. It was pretty uneventful. And I
Wow.
guess after maybe I think so that was in March, and then by May I was pretty much good. But you didn't. I never saw a doctor after that, and I never because there was everything was on the phone. So it just like how you feeling, and then you had to get blood work done once a week. And that was it. It was pretty uneventful. And then once you could go back, and I did have to go through like what do they call that? Kind of a rehab, just for because during the time of healing you normally go through some sort of physiotherapy,
Yeah.
and I didn't have any of that. So by the time I was able to go to someone, I looked like a 90-year-old because I was all crunched up, and like all like I couldn't move my neck, my arms, and stuff
Yeah.
because you just it's pretty intense, but it didn't take long to get back to normal. So it was good.
Wow. Oh
Yeah.
my God. I can't even imagine what you were going through because just the stress of the COVID itself, and then the
Yeah,
stress
but
of COVID in Canada, and then
yeah,
plus the heart surgery on top of that. Oh my goodness.
my partner was incredible, but he was way more stressed out about the whole thing than I
Mm.
was. Like I was like not. I wasn't really stressed at all. Like I was just like, okay, well, there's not much you can do about it, and it was just that was it.
Yeah,
So,
that's a growth mindset, right?
but
And now a follow-up question to that. How was going through that experience of being classified as a category A, like you're almost gonna be checking out of this world,
yeah.
to coming out on top of that and you're here right now? How's that changed your outlook on life?
Oh, totally. Like it's just again though, so like like, I think after the doctor told me that I was A, I told my partner, I said, "Oh my god, I even got an A." And he's like, and he's like, "What does that mean, right?" I go, "Well, it's A, B, C, D, and A is like not long." And my partner's like just freaking out, right? And I'm just like, it's
Mm.
okay. Like, he wouldn't have let me leave if I wasn't gonna make it back for surgery, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like, once you do that and you go, I think the biggest kind of thought process afterwards would be the week that you spend in the hospital, and being alone give you a really long, like the first 3 days you're pretty drugged out on
Hmm.
some pretty amazing stuff. Uh, but after that, when you start coming out of it, you do kind of look at things like just say like, wow, this is really quite remarkable that and when you see what your body looks like afterwards, it's pretty disgusting, right? Because they really just like rip open your chest and crank it open with the vise and everything,
Mm.
and they take veins from different parts of your body. So you look like you literally got thrown through a Singer sewing machine. With pretty
Whoa.
disgusting. And you're all like black and blue, and you have
Yeah.
like, your body's shaved, right? It's not attractive, right? It's like you're like, oh my god, I'll never recover. Um, but it is surprising, like just some of the stuff that you do. It's pretty like the tubes that you have in your body, and then they just come in and pull them out. It's like they're just like hold your breath, and then they pull out a tube, and it's just like, oh my god, are you gonna stitch that up? Or
Oh my
and they're like,
goodness.
no, and they put a little band-aid on it, and then eventually it all heals up, and then that's it. Like I have like this little tiny hair scar on my chest, and that's it.
Yeah.
Crazy,
Yeah.
but
Oh
you wake up
wow.
and you're like, you know what? I'm not gonna worry about shit anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just
Yeah.
not. And you realize, like, you stop yourself from saying like, oh no, I don't feel like doing that. No, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that. I want to do that.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Right? Like
Yeah.
you just don't get stressed about stuff, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's not it is you do have a different, and you really appreciate things a lot more, like differently, right? Like just
Yeah.
nature and air, right? Like smells and stuff like
Mm.
that. Like you really do
Yeah.
just have a totally different. You enjoy your friends more. You laugh more. You laugh at things that you probably didn't laugh at before, and you laugh at the fact that you didn't laugh at them before, right? So there's lots lots of stuff that happens, but it's great, yeah. So
Yeah.
and it
Oh wow. Thank you.
you
Thank you
know
for sharing that story with us.
no
It's
problem.
when you go through a sudden difficult moment in life, and then like you said, you just come out of it and you see life differently. I think
Yeah.
you come out bolder. It's like, oh, I'm willing to take more chances. I'm willing to get out of my own way. I'm willing
Mhm.
to just execute on the ideas that I have, right? And just create this. Well, you might have had a vision for yourself at some point in time, and it's like, no, I'm not gonna do it now. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
now is the time, just do it, because why not?
Yeah, exactly, right? And
Yeah.
then you're like, "What do you got to lose?"
Yeah.
You already know the worst that could happen.
Yeah, I
So,
know, right?
it's like, whatever.
Oh, well,
So,
this has been
yeah.
so much fun, Kevin. If can you let our
Yeah, thank
audience know
you.
where they could find you to follow you and learn more from you?
For sure, on Instagram, everything is, Kevin Raymond Coaching. So on YouTube, it's at Kevin Raymond Coaching. On Instagram, it's Kevin Raymond Coaching with, like a dash, between each word, like Kevin underscore Raymond underscore coaching. So, and it's Facebook, they're all the same title all the time, make it simple. And my email is kevin@kevinraymond.net. And yeah, please follow me on Instagram. I'd really appreciate it.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Guys,
Thank
continue to
you.
get inspired by the brilliance of visionary voices like Kevin's, and so many more we're going to be bringing to you on this platform. Thank you for your time, Kevin.
Take care. Bye bye.
All right, bye now. For more insightful conversations with entrepreneurs, check out this video right here. I think you'll love it. Continue to enjoy, and I'll see you there.